Title: Defendant dresses up for court. Judge's reaction is priceless. Courtrooms are usually serious places. People walk in quietly, dressed neatly, speaking only when spoken to. There's a certain respect in the air, a feeling that what happens here matters. Everyone knows this isn't the place for jokes or surprises. But on this particular day, something completely unexpected happened. Something that turned an ordinary court hearing into a moment no one would forget. The courtroom was settling into its usual routine. Lawyers were preparing their notes, people sat patiently waiting for their cases to be called, and everything seemed completely normal. Then the defendant walked in, and instantly things felt different. At first, people weren't sure what they were seeing. A few heads turned. Someone blinked twice, just to be sure, because the man who had just taken his seat wasn't dressed in the usual courtroom attire. He wasn't wearing a suit or even something casual and respectful. He was wearing a full costume, not just a small accessory or a funny hat, but a complete attention-grabbing outfit. Bright colors, bold design, and absolutely no attempt to blend in. It was the kind of outfit you'd expect at a party, a festival, or maybe even a comic event, not in a courtroom. People started whispering quietly. Some tried to hold back smiles. Others looked confused, unsure whether this was serious or some kind of joke. But the defendant himself sat calmly, completely unfazed, as if everything was perfectly normal. When the judge entered the courtroom, everyone stood up as usual. The room fell silent again, returning to its formal atmosphere. The judge took his seat and began looking over the room, preparing to start the proceedings. And then he saw the defendant. There was a pause. The judge looked again, just to make sure he wasn't mistaken. His expression shifted, first confusion, then surprise, and then something else entirely. A smile slowly appeared on his face. For a moment, it seemed like he was trying to stay serious. After all, this was a courtroom. But the situation was just too unexpected. He leaned back slightly and let out a small laugh. "Sir," he began, trying to maintain control of the room, "is that really what you decided to wear to court today?" A few people in the room couldn't hold it in anymore. Soft laughter spread across the benches. Even some of the lawyers looked down, smiling to themselves. The defendant, however, remained completely calm. He nodded confidently and said, "Yes, Your Honor." There was no hesitation in his voice, no embarrassment, just pure confidence. That answer made the moment even more amusing. The judge tried to keep a straight face, but it didn't last long. Within seconds, he started laughing again, this time more openly. It wasn't just a quick chuckle. It was genuine laughter, the kind that comes from being completely caught off guard. And once the judge laughed, the entire room followed. For a brief moment, the courtroom didn't feel like a courtroom anymore. It felt like a place where something unexpectedly human had happened, something real and unscripted. After a few moments, the judge took a deep breath and tried to compose himself. He adjusted his posture and looked back at the defendant, still smiling. "I have to ask," he said, "what made you think this was a good idea?" The defendant gave a small shrug. "Well, Your Honor," he replied, "I thought I'd bring a little positivity into the room." That answer hit differently. It wasn't defensive, it wasn't disrespectful, it was simple and oddly sincere. The room reacted again, this time with warmer laughter. Even the judge nodded slightly, clearly amused by the honesty. "Well," the judge said, "you've definitely accomplished that." But then his tone shifted slightly, not harsh, but more grounded. "Just remember, this is still a courtroom. There are certain expectations." The defendant nodded respectfully. "I understand, Your Honor." And just like that, the moment balanced itself. The humor stayed, but so did the respect. As the case continued, the atmosphere in the room felt lighter than before. People were more relaxed. The tension that usually filled the space had eased, even if just a little. The defendant's outfit was still impossible to ignore, but now it wasn't causing confusion. It was simply part of the story unfolding in that room. Even as legal matters were discussed, there was a quiet sense that everyone had just shared something rare. Because courtrooms don't usually have moments like this. They're places of rules, decisions, and consequences. People come in expecting seriousness, not surprises. But every now and then, something unexpected breaks through and reminds everyone that life doesn't always follow a script. By the time the hearing was coming to an end, the judge looked at the defendant once more. "I have to say," he said, smiling again, "this is definitely one of the more unusual appearances I've seen." A few people laughed softly, and probably one I won't forget anytime soon. The defendant smiled back, clearly satisfied with the impression he had made. When everything was finished, people began leaving the courtroom, still talking quietly about what they had just witnessed. Some were amused, others were still a bit surprised, but everyone agreed on one thing: it was memorable. The defendant walked out as well, still in his costume, still drawing attention. But now, instead of confusion, people looked at him with a sense of amusement and curiosity. He had taken a serious moment and turned it into something different, something lighter. And while not everyone would agree that a courtroom is the right place for such creativity, there was no denying the impact it had. For a few minutes, the usual tension disappeared. People laughed, the judge laughed, and in a place where laughter is rare, that alone made the moment special. In the end, it wasn't just about the costume, it was about the reaction, the surprise, and the reminder that even in the most serious environments, a little bit of unexpected humor can change everything, because sometimes the moments people remember the most are the ones they never saw coming.